Today I am going over sous vide and all the items that you would need for sous vide. I know there's a lot of stuff here, but I'm gonna go over it thoroughly. You don't need everything here. Some of the basics is you could even start off with a pot. So stay tuned and I will introduce you to sous vide. My name is Sarah, otherwise known as Sara Says Hi here on YouTube, and I follow a low carb diet. I kind of fluctuate between keto, low carb, and then sometimes just falling off the wagon and not doing either. I also do intermittent fasting. Specifically, I'm doing 1 meal a day, which is OMAD right now. And a lot of my meals consist of proteins, just like you, I'm sure, where you want to have a lot of proteins, especially if you're following a low carb keto diet, you're probably cooking a lot of meat. I was introduced to sous vide cooking about 2 months ago. I started ordering those meal kits like Home Chef and Gobble because I just wanted quick recipes that had like the calorie counts for me, so just to kind of help with portion control. But I soon discovered that a lot of the recipes were disappointing, except for Gobble. I really did like Gobble, but Gobble was very pricey, and I knew that I could make a lot of those meals way cheaper if I bought the items myself. A lot of times they wanted you to like warm up meat in the microwave, or you pan fried it. So a lot of the meats were being overcooked, and I really hate overcooked meat, like especially beef. Like I like medium rare steak. So someone on the Reddit forum for those meal companies had suggested that I look into sous vide cooking, and I've heard of it before, and I just thought there's no way I'm going to do sous vide cooking, because I remember a long time ago hearing that someone said that his sous vide cooking setup was like $150, which you'll be surprised when you find out how much I spent on mine. But at that time I thought, oh my gosh, that is so much money. There's no way I could spend that kind of money. I did my research. I started following the sous vide Reddit, and people were talking about the types of circulators, which we'll get to that in a minute if you don't know what that is, and the type of equipment setup. And I was just trying to find the cheapest route just to see like if I would really get into this, if this really was a method I was going to use for cooking. And yes, it is quickly a method that I use all the time. So sous vide is a French word, and it means under vacuum. And the idea of sous vide is that you're cooking your meat, and not just meat. People cook vegetables. You can do potatoes. You can make desserts like creme brulee. So it's not just meat, but that's my use, is for cooking proteins with it. So you're cooking your whatever item it is at a precise temperature. So there's no way that you can undercook it. Well, that's not true. You can if you're not cooking it for the right amount of time. But there's no real way to overcook it unless you accidentally left it too long cooking. There's like a fine time when you are supposed to remove your proteins from the water bath. If you extend past that time, then what will happen is it changes the texture of the meat. It's really weird, but you'll understand if you ever make that mistake. I was sold after I cooked my first steak because it was medium rare and it was beautiful and it was perfect. So I love sous vide cooking. It's my absolute preferred way to cook my proteins right now. One of the benefits of cooking it is that it is a little bit forgiving. So like, let's say you're cooking a hamburger and it says that you're only supposed to cook the hamburger for 45 minutes in the water bath. Well, then you realize after the 45 minutes is up that, oh shoot, like my French fries aren't ready, or this other side isn't ready, or oh man, I have to go out to the store because I don't have any more cheese slices for my burger. Whatever it is, like it will tell you. The app that I use actually does tell me like you can leave this in the water bath for up to 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. It varies on what you're cooking. But so it's a little bit forgiving. So even though the meat is done at an exact time, you do have a little bit of leeway time. Cooking any other traditional way, like if you're gonna barbecue, if you were pan frying your meat, and your meat is done exactly at your medium rare or whatever it is, if it's chicken, it's well done, and you set it aside so you can finish a side, your meat is going to be resting way too long. It's going to get cold and it's not going to taste very good. But with sous vide, it's keeping it at that precise temperature for an extended time until you're ready to pull it out and serve it with the rest of your meal. What I also like about it is that you can cook multiple items at once of the same food item. So let's say in my last video, I sliced up a bunch of ribeyes. Let's say that I am having company over and I need to have 8 ribeyes. Instead of like pan frying them all individually, which would take forever, and then some would cool down by the time, I'm ready to serve all the meat, you can put all 8 steaks in your container if you have a container large enough and cook it all at once. And again, what you can do is for the searing, which we'll get to that later, but you can take maybe 1 steak at a time, 2 steaks out at a time to sear them in a cast iron skillet and leave the rest of the steaks in the water bath, maintaining that precise temperature where they're not going to be overcooked. And then you pull them out when you're ready to pan fry those, to sear them, which this will make sense in a moment. But it's great for meal prep. You could cook a bunch of chicken thighs, ribs, whatever it is, in large bulk amounts. And then you can even keep it in the vacuum sealed bags afterwards, and just like you put them in an ice bath to cool them down, put them in the fridge, and you have your meat for the rest of the week that you can just pan sear to warm it up, 2 days later, whatever, when you're ready to eat it. So I really like that it'll help with meal prepping. Usually I've only cooked enough meat for like 2 nights. I don't like meal prep like for the whole week anymore. One great thing that I really love about it, I live in Fresno, and right now we're already hitting the 90s and it's May, but come like July and August, we will be in triple digits, and that's normally when I would use my Instant Pot for everything. Instead of turning on the oven to cook, it's way too hot to grill, although I don't even have a grill, but it's way too hot to grill outside in that weather too. So typically I would have used my air fryer, which can dry out your meat quite significantly. And I would have used the Instant Pot. Instant Pot is not precise temperature. It's gonna fluctuate a lot. So that's why I prefer sous vide cooking, because it's at that exact precise temperature, so you can't overcook your meats. And it doesn't heat the whole house like my oven would. The other methods just don't do as quite of a good job as cooking the meats as sous vide. So when you're cooking your meats sous vide style, it's cooking in its own juices. Nothing is being stripped away from it. It can't. It has nowhere to go. It stays inside the bag. So it's like cooking in its own juice bath. So your meats are going to come out juicy and tender every single time. I have been obsessed with making pork chops, and every single time they come out, they are just so moist and juicy, where in the past when I would pan fry pork chops or whatever in a skillet, they would be dry. They would lose a lot of their juices right away, but that does not happen with sous vide cooking. So I'm telling you, I'm completely sold on it. There is a guide by Dr. Douglas Baldwin. He developed this guide that talks about pasteurization, at what temperature pathogens die and all of that. So he has a complete guide and tells you like how long you should be cooking fish, how long you should be cooking pork. It depends on the how tender the meat is for how long you cook it and what temperature you cook it. So he has a whole food safety guide, and I will link that below if you're interested in that. Also, I learned all about how to sous vide cook by Guga at Sous Vide Everything, and I keep talking about this. I've mentioned it on my last 2 videos, so again, I'll put a link for his channel down below in the description as well. But typically you're going to be cooking most meats at 130 degrees or higher to kill the pathogens. Like if you cook a little bit lower than that, which I have cooked some steaks at 127, then you have to cook it for a little bit longer to make sure that you are killing the necessary pathogens. The next thing is I'm gonna go on to some equipment that you'll need, and maybe show you some equipment that you might not want to really invest in, because that's what I did, is I made some mistakes. And then now I have like an ideal setup. So this is called the Joule, and this is a circulator. So this is the first thing you need to do sous vide cooking. And this is the thing that is going to be warming up the water. Yes, it sucks up water down here and then it spits it out through this little hole. This is one of the most expensive ones on the market. It runs anywhere from $250 to $300. I bought this off of eBay. It was brand new in the box, and I bought it for I think $200. So you can find some deals out there. I've heard that the company is really good as far as warranty, where people have said that maybe 4 or 5 years after they got theirs, it wasn't working right or something. They contacted the company and the company went ahead and just sent them a brand new one. So they have a really good customer service history. The only thing about this one is that it does not have any controls. As you can see, there's nothing to set the temperature or anything. This is all done by an app. So it comes with its own app. You use your phone to set the temperature and time and all of that, which is kind of cool too, because like if you're gone at work for the day, you can look and see what temperature your meat is cooking at home. There are other cheaper circulators on the market on Amazon. A Nova is also like a really popular one. I chose not to get a Nova because there's a website called Serious Eats where there's a couple of chefs there that tested out these circulators, and they found this one to perform as one of the best. So for example, if you're trying to cook something at 130 degrees, this thing would be so close to 130 degrees. Like it might be 129.9 or 130.2, would just be like a really slight fluctuation. And this also heated the water the fastest. Some of the other ones would take up to 45 minutes to heat. In my experience, this takes about 10 or 15 minutes to heat up my water. Also, a trick I do is I start off with hot water in my basin that I'm going to be cooking it in, and then that way it doesn't take quite as long to come up to that temperature that I need it to. So what you could do in the beginning when you're just starting off sous vide cooking is you could cook in a pot. A lot of people have started off that way. They'll put their pot right on the stove and, obviously the stove is turned off. As far as I know, only this one has a magnetic bottom. So it actually will snap to like it's holding in place because it's magnetically, it's hard to see, but see it, I can put it in the middle of the pot and it'll still stand up. The only thing is like this is an Instant Pot and there's like, it's got a concave design so it doesn't sit flush on it. But I've cooked with it a few times when I was first starting out, especially if it was like a smaller thing. Let's say I was just gonna cook like 1 steak or maybe 2 steaks, then a pot would be good for that because then it's gonna come up to temperature pretty quickly. This is a 6-liter pot. So I would say that you would need at least a minimum of 6 liters to cook in, but you need it deep enough so that the meat can actually be submerged under the water. The one thing about pots is metal is not a good heat conductor. So what that means is basically it's going to lose heat pretty quickly. So what I've seen some people do is they will try to insulate their pots. They will either wrap it up with towels, they will put saran wrap over the top to try to prevent condensation from happening, especially if you're cooking for a long period of time. A lot of condensation will happen. I bought these balls. They're not ping pong balls, and Amazon does sell ping pong balls where people are actually using ping pong balls. But this is actually for sous vide cooking, and I will put a link to everything down below too. But they're these tiny little balls. These actually did a really great job where I couldn't even see any steam coming out of the pot when I had it in there. My issue was when it came time to pull the bags out, or if I wanted to kind of move them around to, switch it around. My little, what do you call them, tongs, the balls kept getting stuck like in between the tongs when I'm trying to grab the food. So it was quite a nuisance. This was just like a temporary thing for me to use in the beginning. If you want to go the cheapest route, do this. My next purchase was this guy right here. And this is a Nova sous vide container. You have to be careful about the type of plastic if you choose to get a plastic bin to cook your food in. I forget what this one is called, I don't remember what it's called, but this one is food safe. And the main thing is you want to make sure that your plastic container can withstand the heat for a long period of time of cooking. Most of them go up past 200 and something degrees, 212 degrees or 220 degrees, I forget what it is. So this one I started off with, and Anova is a popular brand for sous vide. If you go to Costco, they actually have a whole kit that's $150 that will come with this container. And it comes with an Anova circulator, and the Anova circulator has like the little dials and everything right on the circulator so that you can set the temperature by hand. The only thing I read some reviews is that the newer Anova one, and especially the Costco one, was very noisy. I have a very small house and I didn't want to have that kind of noise, so I decided not to get that kind. But I did want the container because this is a 16-liter container. It's quite large, but it's ideal if you're gonna cook racks of ribs. It's large enough where you could cook probably 2 or 3 racks. That was the reason why I got this. But then I realized this is way too large for only cooking like 2 to 3 steaks. So this bad boy is only for when I'm cooking something really large. Otherwise, I'm gonna use my smaller container, which will be over here, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And this was a great deal. So if you were to buy this off of Amazon, I think it's $80. And what I did is Amazon has a thing where, for any item, where if you buy an item that's like a used product, if you look at their used listings, sometimes there's brand new items that are returned back to Amazon. What they'll do is they'll mark it like new, and that means the product is perfect, that it has everything that it's supposed to work. The customer just changed their mind and didn't want it. And so Amazon obviously can't turn around and sell it new, so they mark it like new. And so when I went to look to see if there was any in the Amazon warehouse, I found this one for $20 cheaper that was marked like new. And when it came in perfect condition. The only thing is the box was not sealed, but everything else completely sealed. Like it had all the plastic wrappings, the styrofoam, and all of that. But this one is great because it has this little grate that goes right over the top here. And the idea is that this is supposed to help keep your meat submerged underwater. Sometimes there's gases that will build up in the bags, especially with pork, and the bags will rise above the water, and you want to be careful because if it does that, that's where you're in the food safety danger zone where the pathogens will not be killed properly. So you really want to make sure that your food is submerged under the water. Another thing that you can do to help submerge the food is people will use, I've seen them use plates. They'll put a plate on top of their meat product. They do sell special racks that hold the bags. Like Guga, he always uses a rack. And I actually bought this one off of IKEA, and this is not for sous vide cooking. This is a pots and lids rack. Like you put it in your shelf and you could put your pot lids or whatever to organize it, but it's stainless steel. So I decided that I would use this. So you can put it in something large like this and it will hold your bags of meat. The other thing I've done with it is one time I was cooking some pulled pork. And I actually just put this right over the bag so it helped keep it submerged under the water. So after that container, I moved to a much smaller one. So this one is now 12 liters, and this is made by Rubbermaid. I do believe that they were saying that this container is not advertised as BPA free. As I did research, I decided I was just gonna go ahead and go with this, especially because my food is being cooked in bags, BPA-free bags, but I'm not really concerned about any plastics leaching from here into the bags. This one is also a very popular container. A lot of sous vide cooks use this. They might even get one that's a taller one. I think there's a 14-liter one and a 16-liter that's taller. I wanted something kind of small, which this is still quite big. This can easily fit, after my circulator's in there, this could easily fit 4 to 6 pork chops. So when I first got this, I did not have a lid for it, so I was using those little sous vide plastic balls to help keep the condensation in. The plastic containers do insulate heat a lot better than the metal containers, so that's why people use these plastic ones. You'll even see, like on Reddit, people will make ice chest sous vide cooks. Like they will make this alien looking sous vide container, and I just definitely would not trust using one of those, even though they insulate it in and out and all this crazy stuff. I just don't go that route. Just buy a cheap little container, and they're not cheap, I won't lie. Like I think this one is probably $30. I went and ordered this that was designed by a company specifically to fit the Rubbermaid containers for sous vide cooking. And what I liked about this is that this one has a special cutout that is designed to fit my circulator. So it'll hold it in place, because obviously there's no magnetic bottom in this to hold my circulator. So here's the little hole, and you would just pop your circulator in like this. The Joule, like I said, this is designed specifically for the Joule, and the Joule has like a little clip that will hold it into the plastic container here. You plug it in and it's ready to go. The other thing that you are gonna need for any kind of container that you're cooking your sous vide in is that you want to protect your counter space. Unless you're cooking on the stove, then you don't have to worry about it. But if any type of counter space, tabletop surface, this is cooking at a pretty high heat for a long period of time. So like if I was just to cook it here on my tile, the tile is gonna get warm, especially you're doing a 24-hour cook, 36-hour cook on something. And I've seen the pictures of people that have cracked their tabletops and countertops. So you wanna protect it. I bought these cork, like hot pad trivets, I guess they call it, that I use on my counter. So I'll just put it there and then put my sous vide cooker on top. The next important thing that you need is a vacuum sealer, because you have to seal your meats so that you can throw them in the water bath. Along with the vacuum sealer, obviously you need to buy vacuum bags to seal your meats. The other way is that people will use Ziploc bags, and they'll use the gallon size ones and stuff as well. And there's a water displacement trick. It's all over the internet. If you look at, if you were to Google sous vide water displacement, they'll show you exactly how they just take a regular Ziploc bag, and you wouldn't want to put it in your sous vide cooker container yet, because that water is going to be really hot and you don't want to burn your hands. So they'll actually put their meat inside the bag, put it in another pot of warm water, cold water, or whatever, and then they just make sure that it's like it creates a vacuum seal by pushing all of the air out of the bag. But what I found is, like, if my meat started to float because you don't get a good seal on this bag, and oftentimes you want to try to get the air out so you don't close it all the way. What I found is, like, if my meat was floating and I was trying to like push the air out, it might get some water from the container into your bag. So I don't really like using the Ziploc bags. You can get away with it as a cheap method, but I just prefer to use the vacuum seal bags. The roll is very cheap to buy on Amazon. These are the rolls of vacuum sealer bags that I purchased off Amazon, and this is from the company called Out of Air. And I first purchased this bigger one here, which is 11 inches by 100 feet. So you would just pull out the bag to the length that you need it, and then use a little cutter to cut off, the size of the bag that you need. And then I realized that for some things that I wanted smaller, like if I was just gonna cook 2 like hamburger patties or something, then I realized I wanted a smaller one. So this one is 8 inches by 100 feet. And again, it's the same thing where you would just pull it out as much as you need and then slice it. I also use this for like blocks of cheese or anything that's small that I'm gonna vacuum seal in my fridge. Sometimes I'll shred up Parmesan and I'll vacuum seal it in this and then put it in my fridge versus buying the Parmesan that has like the fillers and stuff in it, the starches. I think it's potato starch they put in there. Anyhow, so I really, really love buying these off Amazon, way cheaper. Don't buy the Food Saver brand, it's so expensive and they don't give you very many. So this brand has been pretty good so far. Again, I'll have links for all the products below. The last thing that you need is an iron skillet. When your food first comes out of the sous vide container, it does not look appetizing. It's very washed up looking. The outside it doesn't have that crispness yet to it. So what you want to do is you will warm up your skillet. I usually warm mine on medium-high heat. I'll start off with like some avocado oil in the skillet. Let it heat up. I'll sear my meat on there, and then sometimes I'll add butter. Oh, I do want to mention that you don't have to just use an iron skillet to sear your meat. If you head over to Guga's channel, you'll see that he uses a sous vide gun. It's like this flamethrower thing that he uses to sear his meat with. He sometimes sears it on the barbecue, or like I said, I don't have a grill, so that's not an option for me. I always use my iron skillet. On occasion, I have put it into the oven for the broiler aspect of it. But otherwise, I just prefer the iron skillet. And I will go through the process and show you how I do it personally, but this video was just to like go over all the equipment and the setup. So really, this is the setup that I use right now. The 16-liter Rubbermaid container, my Chef Steps circulator, and the little lid for it. And what I'm gonna do in the next video is I'm going to start cooking some chicken thighs, and you'll see how I start all that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I just really wanted to introduce you to sous vide cooking, especially if you've never heard of it, or just have heard of it but wasn't sure how it was done. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, and when you do, don't forget to hit that little bell icon, and that'll notify you every time that I've uploaded a new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.